Hi, I'm Ron Spurnberg, co-founder and CEO of Hi Mama. Welcome to our podcast about all things early childhood education.
In this week's episode, we delve into the balanced learning approach, implemented in Primrose school franchises across the U.S. As the name of the approach states, the emphasis of the curriculum is on balance, including the balance of play-based learning led by children's natural curiosity with guiding questions from educators to enable children to take their development to the next level. Our guest, Dr. Gloria Julius, is the Vice President of Education and Professional Development at Primrose Schools, a forward-thinking, franchise-based early learning organization with over 325 locations across the U.S. She also has over 30 years of experience as a teacher and leader in the Maryland public school system. If you're interested in educational philosophies and approaches to curriculum, then you'll want to stay tuned for this week's episode of the Preschool Podcast. Gloria, how long have you been with Primrose?
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years. And what role do you play at Primrose?
I'm the Vice President of Education and Professional Development. So my team develops all the curriculum, the training for the whole system. We work with people like Jackson Spalding as far as doing the content for media and marketing and so on.
And for those that aren't familiar with Primrose, can you give us a little bit of background about the school?
Sure. We are a franchise organization based in Atlanta, but we have schools all over the country. We have over 325 schools. I think we're up to 327. I lose count because we're opening schools continuously. Every couple of weeks, we're opening a new one. But I think we're up to almost 330 right now, and all around the country, coast to coast, from New England to California and in between. Our biggest population is probably in Texas and Georgia.
Got ya. One of the areas that I wanted to focus our conversation on was around the curriculum or the programming at Primrose. Every childcare program has, a unique approach, and I did a little bit of research on Primrose, and you're using what's called a balanced learning approach. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means?
Right. Everything in Primrose is about balance. So we call our exclusive early education approach the balanced learning approach. And first of all, it starts with our belief statement that we believe who children are is as important as what they know. So we balance that character development and social emotional with the academic, intellectual, creative, physical development. And it's a balance of research-informed theories and approaches, a balance of the traditional early learning theorists like Piaget, Montessori, Vygotsky, and we balance that with the best of modern wisdom, current research on the child's brain development. And that, to me, is very fascinating because now we can actually see into a child's brain. And that shows how babies understand and respond to adult and peer interactions. And a lot of that's coming out of the University of Washington Institute of Learning and Brain Scientists under Drs. Andrew Meltzoff and Patricia Kuhl, and also the Harvard Center on the Developing Child by Dr. Jack Shonkoff. So we've engaged early learning experts across the United States to help us to interpret that research and then blend it into an exclusive, unique curriculum that has a balance of this research. The second point for balance is that because we believe children learn best with a balance of purposeful play and nurturing guidance from teachers that satisfies their natural curiosity. And children need a time to explore on their own, to look at their little world and discover their own interests and to satisfy that curiosity. But we also believe that the children can take their learning only to a certain level on their own. They need adults to ask those guiding questions like, what if we did this? Or I wonder what would happen if, and that guides the children in then eventually asking their own questions as they're exploring. But we also believe that adults need to be there to introduce new experiences to children with accompanying vocabulary that will expand their world and language development beyond what they might be able to do on their own. And then the third piece for a balance is that balance among all of the different learning domains, which I kind of referenced earlier with our belief statement, in that, we place just as much emphasis on the physical, the creative arts, the social emotional development, and particularly that character development, and as we do on what would be considered the more traditional academic, the sciences, the language, the math. And these are all intentionally embedded throughout the program. They're not add-ons. They're not ancillary programs. They're all part of the program that helps develop a well-rounded child.
Interesting. So let me just start off touching on one of the first points that you made, which is that you're using multiple approaches. And what's the reasoning behind that? Is there certain benefits? It is quite unusual because usually you see a child care program that's sort of like a more traditional daycare. You see maybe a Montessori, but you don't necessarily see very often someone that's doing multiple approaches across their curriculum. Why do you do that?
Well, it goes into what I was talking about, that we truly believe that different children have different styles of learning. So a Montessori approach is great for those children who have that independence and strive to learn on their own. But there are children who need that structure, who need, to be scaffolded like Vygotsky's. And so we believe that blend and that balance among all of the different types of researchers, and we do put it together in a very unique way, so that we can address any child's learning style. And because there are parts of our day where the children are on their own, that would be kind of a Montessori kind of program. But then there are times in our day when the teacher is, for lack of a better word, structuring their learning to, again, introduce those concepts and those experiences that they might not get on their own, and to present that vocabulary, that rich language that children need. But again, unless they hear it from an adult or an older peer or someone who's had more experiences, they're not going to naturally learn it on their own. So we believe that's why we take what we believe the best of all and incorporate those into our unique approach that will address any style of learning for the children and take them to the highest level they can possibly go.
Okay, that's interesting. So do you think it's fair to say that every child benefits from all the different types of approaches in some way, shape, or form, but maybe there's a certain style that is really most suited to their learning style, and that's really beneficial to them, I guess is what you're saying?
Yeah, everybody, even as adults, we all have our way of approaching our learning. And in fact, that's one of the standards, approaches to learning. And so a child, and teachers will learn this through observing the children in the classroom. They will watch the children as to, okay, how do they approach a new situation? How do they approach something that is familiar to them? And, do they ask a lot of questions, or do they try to, learn on their own? Are they seeking guidance, or do they have the confidence to go out and satisfy that curiosity? And a teacher then will, as they observe those children, and then as they're working with the children, they will adapt their approach based on the research that we have given them and based on the curriculum that we have given them to help each child develop using their strengths. We call it strengths-based, and it's using their strengths to learn, to go to the next level and to learn new materials.
Right. So this sounds like a very sensible approach. I like the idea of a balanced approach. One of the things that jumps out to me, though, is that it does seem like it might be challenging as an early childhood educator to implement something where the children are exploring and using their natural curiosity, as you say, and then giving them guiding questions to push them sort of to that next level of learning. How do you enable your early childhood educators at Primrose to be able to do that effectively in the classroom?
It's a combination of the way we write our curriculum. We have a lot of what we call job-embedded professional development written right into the curriculum, with teaching tips, with little how-to videos and suggestions on when to ask certain questions, or how to approach a child when they're at a learning center, so that you're not interrupting their flow of thinking, but you're actually supporting and moving that forward. So training and professional development is a big key and something that we at Primrose pride ourselves in offering. And, from the orientation of teachers, where they have a minimum of 30 to 40 hours of training before they even, are leading a classroom. And a lot of it might be health and safety, but it's a lot of how do you interact with children so that, as I said, that you're not disturbing their flow of thought, you're actually enhancing and moving it to the next level and helping them to expand on their learning. So it's and constantly helping the teachers through mentoring, through coaching. Every school has someone on their leadership team who is considered what we call an education coach, or someone who works with the teachers and observes the teachers and coaches and mentors them to be able to know when those opportune times are occurring. They might point them out in the classroom, and then what do you do during that time?
I see. I like the aspect of having that education coach or mentor, because I think the training part is really important, as you say, but then also sort of that ongoing coaching and mentoring, I think, is also pretty key.
Right. That's how they really are able to apply it. We have online learning. We have face-to-face, they do staff meetings, professional development days, and so on, that we guide them from our level. We give them the content, and then the leadership team members do deliver those to the teachers and coach them. But, if you're not if you don't know how to apply it, there's what we call the book learning, as you know, and you can have all the book learning in the world, but if you can't apply it in a real life situation, what good is it? So that's where the coaches come in. The coaches help the teachers to see, okay, remember, this is what we learned in that course or that staff meeting, and this is what it looks like in the classroom, and let me help you to maximize that and to optimize the approach.
Where do you think the education coaches spend most of their time with the early childhood educators, in terms of, where are they struggling the most? What's the most difficult part of implementing this type of approach?
Well, it's probably what we would call classroom management. Sometimes it's a case of just sitting back and observing the child and getting to know the teachers. Often want to just jump in and help the child. The challenge, I think, is we as adults tend to want to get in there and help a lot. And sometimes it's just sitting back and watching the child and knowing then, okay, when do you start asking those guiding questions and to take that learning to the next level? And when do you just let the child discover and learn on their own? Because we are impatient creatures, and it takes patience to be able to know the right time with that. So, and then when you are, what kinds of questions? And we train the teachers to ask open-ended kinds of questions to the children. So again, that it takes that learning to the next level. It's not a yes/no question. It's not a right answer. We want to open their minds and to say, and to see how do they think, and then the teachers are trained in how to have those powerful interactions with the children in a way that won't stifle learning, but will open their world of learning.
Interesting. You mentioned you also do want to have aspects of some of these school readiness skills, like maybe math, reading, writing. How do you effectively work that into your program while also maintaining this opportunity for play-based learning and exploring?
Well, that's done in several ways. We do, as I said earlier, we have that balance between what is considered purposeful play, where the children initiate their own time, whether they're at learning centers, outdoor play, those times when the children do get to choose what they want to do. But then we incorporate whatever language experiences, math that would be appropriate for that. We do, in our schedule, we do have a structured time where the teacher is with the whole group introducing a concept for the day, whether it's our curriculum is very science-based, so it's usually around a science concept, and then they do small group learning with the children where they are reading stories through language and math. They have small group math, they have small group language and literacy, where the teacher will read to them, they'll talk about the story, they'll point out certain words, they will introduce letters and sounds in the context of what they're learning. So that's where that balance comes in from and then the teacher introducing these concepts that a child might not learn on his own. They do it in a lesson kind of way, but a play way. The lesson is either a read aloud or some sort of game activity or something that the children are having fun while they're learning. It's not a lecture. It's not a drill. It's not a worksheet. But it's done in a playful way that they see the context of their learning, and then they reinforce that throughout the day, whether it be transitions or when they are having these meaningful interactions. They might bring in some of the vocabulary that they learned during their large group science time, and so that the children can see how it relates, that it's not just something we do here during our lesson time, but there's a context for it, and there's an application for it, and a reason why we're learning this to function in our world.
Interesting. Sounds great. On a bit of a side note, but related, do you find that licensing and regulations have much of an influence on your curriculum and programming, or is that quite an independent thing?
Oh, no, it has a great influence on our curriculum and in what we do in the classrooms. Because here in the United States, different states have different licenses. It's all run by the states. But there are, because of safety and health, there are a lot of regulations that licensing requires that can sometimes inhibit what we do. They will prohibit certain materials that we think are very exciting for children, but because they might be choking hazards or because they might if they eat them, they're toxic or whatever. And it's all about creating a safe environment, which that is number one, a priority for us. So we, when we're looking at materials, we start there. What materials are not allowed or could create a safety hazard or a health hazard for the children. And so, and that oftentimes comes from licensing.
And what about assessments? What role does that play for Primrose in terms of children's learning and development? Is there a big focus on assessments and sort of where children stand? And also, is there some regulatory influence with that also?
Well, assessments are built right into our program. Again, that is part of our balanced learning approach. And it's done more observationally, where the teachers will observe the children and record what level they are, and then report, communicate with the parents as to this is what your child, is able to do, and give them some suggestions. At the early childhood level, as far as regulatory requirements, that comes into play more at maybe preschool and pre-K, pre-kindergarten and kindergarten areas, where some of our states do have kindergarten entry requirements that they have to, that our children have to have as they move into that. So, and again, every state is a little different. And so but as far as having formal assessments that are required, there are only a couple states that require them at our level. When you get into the kindergarten level, which we do have kindergartens in many of our schools, it's an optional program in our schools, but we do, though, at Primrose, do an external assessment. We have our internal assessments, which say how well the children are learning our curriculum, but then at pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, we do rely on an external assessment that is a commercial kind of assessment that is approved among many of our states as a pre-kindergarten or a kindergarten entry assessment. And that helps us to understand how well the children are applying what they're learning at Primrose to the general, expectations of the various states. So it's a combination.
Got you. And so, to me, it seems like Primrose has a very progressive approach to early childhood education curriculum. Where do you see curriculum moving in early childhood education in the next 5 to 10 years? Is there certain trends that are happening right now?
The greatest trend that I see, and Primrose really, we do tout ourselves, and we do truly believe we are one of the leaders. So the way we're developing curriculum right now, with it being totally integrated and with that balance, I believe others will pick up on that. But at the same time, there are some trends out there, and what I see, especially here in the United States, is more of a trend towards what is high quality, and trying to define high quality in early childhood, no matter what curriculum we're using or program. What is high quality, and exciting to me in many ways that we are finally looking at that. We haven't come with what does that really mean, but because we're impatient again when it comes to research and trying to find, what really does work for children. But just that they're talking about it, starting at the president, having a commitment to that, and then even business leaders trying to follow suit. And it kind of starts with the research that James Heckman has done, who's an economist, and he has come to the conclusion that for every dollar that we spend on early childhood education, we save as a entity, so to speak, we save $7 as when those children reach adulthood in less welfare costs, in less imprisonment costs, and other socially funded programs that a good education can prevent. And so many of the business leaders now of major organizations and corporations are now understanding that and starting to form foundations and put an emphasis on early learning. So that is very exciting to me. One trend, though, that does kind of make me nervous is that trend, and we kind of touched a little bit on it, that school readiness trend, and how different schools and organizations define that and how they interpret that. Because unfortunately, school readiness is often operationalized in what we call push down of skills. And as part of the preparation phase for our latest curriculum, we researched all of the United States early learning standards. And the standards have changed greatly over the last 10 years, being more detailed with higher expectations for these little young children. And I believe in higher expectations, and I believe that children can learn them if taught in a developmentally appropriate way. And what worries me is that many of our schools, elementary schools in particular, are starting to interpret that as kindergarten readiness being you need to know everything that used to be introduced in kindergarten. And I know when I was teaching, I taught first grade, and much of what is now in the early learning standards for preschool is I taught first graders, highly experienced first graders. And again, my 4-year-old granddaughter she is a testament to say they are able to learn. She knows all her letters. She knows her numerals. She is a whiz at jigsaw puzzles. And so I know they're capable of learning as long as it's done in a developmentally appropriate way, a play-like atmosphere that makes it fun to learn, and it's not a chore. The danger comes, and this is what worries me, is when children are going into a kindergarten or first grade and they're being, quote, tested, and we talked about assessments earlier, they're literally being tested to see how many skills they have. And if they don't have all these skills, they're considered behind from the very beginning. And that's very unfair because I believe that instead of saying get children ready for school, because that definition is different no matter where you go, let's get our schools ready to receive our children. And rather than saying you're behind if you don't know all your letters going into kindergarten, let's see where they are and let's teach them in a way that they will learn and love learning. And that's what Primrose is all about. We want children to learn, but we want them to love learning in the meantime, because once they're turned off to learning, you've shut the door. And that concerns me greatly, that's becoming a trend that just start them earlier. Well, yes, we need to start them earlier, but with the right things. Let's build that language. Let's build those experiences so that they have the background of knowledge that when they are reading a story or hearing a story, they understand what all of that means.
Yeah, that's interesting. We recently posted an article about school readiness in preschool, and it gathered a lot of comments. You could really tell it was quite a hot topic amongst people, and a lot of people touched on the points that you touched on here. The way it looks like to me is almost like early childhood education recently has been making greater strides than school-age programs in terms of what's being applied in the classroom at the preschool level. For example, what you're doing at Primrose versus the K-12 program.
Yes, I believe that with the emphasis on early childhood education, now that is not just nationally here in the United States, but internationally, that there is opportunity for us to work together with the school-age children, or the school-age leaders, and to be a leader among the early education environment, to help them understand what is developmentally appropriate for children. We all want to get to the same end. We're just looking at it from a different means. And rather than pushing down to the preschools and saying, your children, need to do this to be ready for school, I feel that early educators and leaders in the early childhood, early learning environment can help push back to the elementary schools and say, let's do this together. We're all want the same, but we're looking at it from a different means. But let's pull together so that we all get what we want, that the early educators are able to provide a developmentally appropriate education and learning experience for children so they continue to love learning and aren't pressured so much, and yet the elementary schools are able to meet their goals as well with well-educated children. And it's going to take a collective effort, and I think it's going there. I mean, we hear a lot about play-based, and we just have to convince those elementary leaders that let's work together on this. And if we work together, we'll come to the same end. We all want the same end. We just have a different means to get there. And I really believe that if we work together, we can come to a conclusion that will benefit all children and keep them wanting to learn. Too many children are getting stressed out and high anxiety at a young age. And statistics out there, children of 14 who want to commit suicide, or, who are clinically depressed, and because they've been pushed and pushed and pushed beyond what their capabilities, but they feel like they have to perform. And I truly believe the early childhood is where we can make the greatest impact, but we have to have the support of the next levels as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because not only in relation to school-age programs, but sort of all external, let's call them external organizations, external influencers who are telling the early learning sector, early childhood educators, what to do and how to do it. I think there really is an opportunity for leaders inside early childhood education to voice their views about the best way to do things, or better ways to do things in terms of children's learning and development and curriculum and programming, because there's a lot of knowledge there. And this podcast focuses on leaders in early childhood education. And that's why I really want to touch on that point about people voicing their views who do have the knowledge and do have the experience in this space, because I think they have great things to say.
Right. And also to add to that, I mean, you kind of alluded to it, Ron, that even when you get to school age, when you hit kindergarten, first grade, second grade, these children are still young children. That doesn't mean that they're now, it's time to sit them in a desk and give them worksheets and so on. They still have that early childhood thinking and way of learning and it's helping the elementary age principals and teachers to understand children can still learn, but let's make it more childlike. Let's give them experiences that are a little more open-ended and not so structured. And you can do that with that balance, which that's what Primrose is all about. It's that balance that offers both. And I see too often, elementary age, and I was an elementary teacher, an elementary school principal, and we were guilty as well. But now, really, now that the research is out there that says children really do best through play-like experiences and having fun. They want to learn, and so let's help them continue to want to learn and satisfy their natural curiosity rather than trying to put them in our box. And they're not little adults, they're children. And I think the research is showing that a child's brain develops much differently than an adult brain, and we tend to want to think of them as little adults, and they're not. So I think we can, I really would like to see us all working together to, like I said, for the same end.
Yeah, absolutely. Grade 1 is really just an arbitrary time in a child's life. It's not like you can really flip a switch and say, okay, you're in a desk now and you need to take these tests. It's really nonsensical.
Right. And we're finding now, collaboration and being a little more flexible with how we present materials, even at our universities and so on. It's that we learn best when we're actively involved in something. And so why would we do anything different for children?
Yeah, very cool. I just have a few quick questions before we finish off here today. So the first one is, you mentioned that one thing that you're quite excited about is the attention that early childhood education is finally starting to get because of great research like the one you mentioned where, every dollar invested in early childhood education results in a $7 return. And I know there was a similar study in Canada, and I think it was an $8 return to the country for every dollar invested. It makes so much sense to invest in early childhood education. What do you think we can do to help get the word out and help close this misalignment between the importance of early childhood education and the level of investment in early childhood education?
Well, I think it's just keeping the conversations going, and even some of the things that you're doing, through these podcasts and through media and opportunities to really help people to understand the importance of it. Because I became an educator because I feel like no matter who you are dependent on your education to get you where you are. And sometimes education's gotten a little bum rap, and it's not fair because it's like one bad apple influences everybody. And there are great things going on out there at all levels. And I mean, even what I was saying about elementary, that's not every elementary school, but it just seems to be that's the thinking. And so finding those wonderful programs that are the models that are really making a difference and replicating as much as we can, and just, again, banding together as leaders to get the word out, promote that research in whatever way we can, whether it's through the traditional media, whether it's through social media, whether it's finding those avenues to make that happen and educate our society, because we tend to think education is the way we experienced it as a child, and the current research is showing that it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it shouldn't necessarily be that way.
Yeah, I think, like you said, just being part of that conversation and making sure it's moving along, and you do your part as whoever you are in the early childhood education space, I think is really a good point. I know you mentioned Washington and Harvard as influencing the curriculum at Primrose. Where are other places where you get the latest information or research about what's happening in early childhood education?
We actually have engaged a group of experts who have done some of the research and also have keep on top of the research, and they help us, they advise us along the way to keep us on top of it. But Primrose has just developed a formal partnership with E06, and they curate a lot of the research there, and so we communicate very much with them. They share what they have learned, and then we can incorporate that as well. So, their specialty is from birth through age 3, but they also go through age 5. They're an early childhood organization that curates a lot of that research for us as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I know 0 to 3, and they do some great stuff and have a lot of great resources.
Well, thanks so much for the great conversation today, Gloria. It was wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you, Ron.
What's your name?
Michaela.
Michaela. How are you?
Hi.
You having fun playing?
Yes.
It's a nice day, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. What's your favorite thing to play out here?
Playing monsters.
You like to play monsters? Do you like the swings? Okay. What else you like to do?
Play my Dora bike.
Oh, with your Dora bike? Oh, okay. Do you ride fast?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Well, have fun here. All right.